Welcome to the world today. I am Amarachi Ubani. We woke up this morning to sad news in Nigeria's northeast region, where Potiskum, the Yobe state capital, was again attacked by gunmen believed to be Boko Haram members. A person dressed up as a student and attended the morning assembly at the senior science secondary school, and a bomb was detonated. Today's attack comes just a week after a suicide bomber blew himself up, and some Muslim faithful who were on a procession in commemoration of Ashura Day also in Potiskum. The State Commissioner for Education, Mohammed Laming, told Channels Television earlier that 33 students were killed in the blast, while 67 others sustained injuries. According to him, of the 67 wounded, 41 have been referred to the two teaching hospitals in Nguru and Azare in Yobe and in Bauchi states. The commissioner also announced that all schools in Potiskum have been shut down, pending the improvement of the security situation in the commercial city. We do know that northeast Nigeria has been the target of attacks by Boko Haram suspects, attacking schools, government buildings, and ordinary people who are going about their normal businesses. We'll have more on this as we expect reactions from the Nigeria Defense headquarters, and we also expect reactions from people living in Potiskum. We'll keep you updated on that story here on Channels Television. You're looking at pictures from eyewitness reporters much earlier today of the attack in Potiskum. These are just pictures that eyewitnesses have sent in, showing some of the damage that is taking place, some of the people who have been left homeless, and those who, I believe that is a picture of a dead body covered with branches of leaves and so on. It's a really sad situation. We do warn you, some of the pictures are a bit quite uncomfortable to watch, though, but this is the reality in Potiskum, Yobe State today. People wounded in the attacks, so what we're seeing right now, those who survived, fortunately, but not without wounds and scars and injuries. This one's just very lucky to be alive and to be able to tell the story of what happened. We'll be learning more about how this happened. Remember, this happened at a school in Potiskum, the Yobe State capital. It was not at a government building. It was at a school, so most of the injured would be students. We'll keep you updated on that story as soon as we learn more about what happened there this morning. Now, after 2 years of tension between China and Japan, the leadership of both countries have met to talk about the territorial dispute that they've battled over the years. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe both met on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Beijing, China. U.S. President Barack Obama stressed the importance of ties between both countries and with the United States, saying that these ties, that the United States welcomes the rise of a prosperous, peaceful, and stable China.
China and the United States have agreed to significantly extend the terms of short-term visas. U.S. President Barack Obama said on Monday, November 10, in Beijing, a deal, he said, would improve trade and business ties between the two world's largest economies. Under the deal, which the United States will put into effect on November 12, both countries will extend the terms of multiple entry short-term tourist and business visas to 10 years from 1 year. The White House said in an accompanying statement, student visas would be extended to 5 years from 1 year.
But keep in mind, last year, 1.8 million Chinese visitors to the United States contributed $21 billion to our economy and supported more than 100,000 American jobs. This agreement could help us more than quadruple those numbers. I've heard from American business leaders about how valuable this step will be, and we've worked hard to achieve this outcome because it clearly serves the mutual interests of both of our countries.
The extension of some visas for Chinese nationals to 10 years matches what is currently allowed for citizens of nations with close relations with the United States, such as European countries and Brazil. Obama said the United States welcomes a prosperous and stable China.
The United States welcomes the rise of a prosperous, peaceful, and stable China. I want to repeat that.
Obama said he hopes to make progress with his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, on a bilateral investment treaty, and more could be done to reduce barriers to trade.
Deepening our economic ties is why I also hope to make progress with President Xi towards an ambitious, high-standard bilateral investment treaty that opens up China's economy to American investors. An agreement that could unlock even more progress and more opportunity in both of our countries.
Obama said he looked to China to reject the use of cyber theft for commercial gain.
We look to China to create a more level playing field on which foreign companies are treated fairly so that they can compete fairly with Chinese companies. A playing field where competition policy promotes the welfare of consumers and doesn't benefit just one set of companies over another.
He called on world leaders to reduce trade barriers.
We can do more to reduce barriers to trade and economic growth. Since 2006, we've worked together towards the ultimate goal of a free trade area of the Asia-Pacific, and APEC has shown a number of pathways that could make it a reality. And one of those pathways is the Trans-Pacific Partnership between the United States and 11 other nations.
Obama urged China to move towards sustainable growth and stand up for human rights and freedom of press.
To move definitively towards a more market-determined exchange rate. And yes, to stand up for human rights and freedom of the press. We don't suggest these things because they're good for us. We suggest that China do these things for the sake of sustainable growth in China and the stability of the Asia-Pacific region.
Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe held formal talks for the first time since the two leaders took office, a breakthrough in an attempt to end a bitter two-year row over history and territory. China and Japan, the world's second and third largest economies, have sparred over disputed islands, regional rivalry, and bitter legacy of Japan's wartime occupation of China. The meeting between Xi and Abe took place in Beijing's Great Hall of the People, came 3 days after both countries agreed to work on improving ties and signal willingness to put the row over the islands on the back burner.
Well, as this is a major summit for the region, the VOA's Jeffrey Young joins me now from the studios in Washington. Jeff, thanks for joining us on The World Today. You've been monitoring the APEC summit all day. Tell us about this meeting that held between President Xi Jinping and the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. What more do we know of that meeting?
The observers who saw the two of them get together and exchange greetings noticed that there was very cold body language involved. The Chinese President Xi did not really engage in idle conversation with his Japanese counterpart. Yes, they stood together. Yes, they extended their hands and they shook, and they keep shaking for the cameras. You've seen this sort of a thing of a million times. But as far as what was the flux between the two of them, observers say there was very little. What you saw was a formality. Abe was there, the Chinese leader was there, they shook hands. Take it from there, but that's all it is.
So what sort of conversations did they have eventually? Because I'm reading up here that they talked about maritime crisis mechanism, establishment of a maritime crisis mechanism. The row between both countries, the reason why there's a lot of tension is because of the Diaoyu Islands, which both countries lay claim to. Did they say anything about the islands? Ownership, perhaps?
To the best of my knowledge, and from what observers have reported, there was no public conversation regarding the status of the islands in question. This is a major hotspot between the two of them, but China has extended itself not just with these islands, but also with other areas involving Vietnam and the Philippines, etc. China is trying to establish a very significant economic zone in the South China Sea, and essentially wants it to be its private lake and wants to try to exclude competitors from the area. But again, this was the question between Japan and China regarding the islands. There was no official discussion on the record that was reported to the press.
And Jeff, it does seem like the United States does need China more now than ever before. Can you talk to us more about the relations between the two countries, as expressed by President Barack Obama announcing new visa policies for Chinese business people and students who want to come to the U.S.?
Going into this meeting, China's position, their posture, is very confident and very assertive. And interestingly, while it sees itself as ascendant, there are elements of Chinese media that have been projecting President Obama as a weakened leader. One of them is China's semi-official Global Times publication that says U.S. public opinion, the elections, has downgraded him. It also went on to say he, meaning President Obama, has done an insipid job offering nearly nothing to his supporters. Quite interesting that at the time of a summit that you would have a information organ such as the China Times, the Global Times rather, publishing information which doesn't really lend itself to, let's say, conviviality between world leaders.
It's interesting that you should say that, Jeff, because it does sound like you're saying that President Obama used this as a publicity stunt, considering that the Republicans, following the elections last week, are now in control of the House of Representatives and also in control of the Senate.
I wouldn't go so far as to use the words publicity stunt. He has to assert himself on the world stage. He just came out of a midterm election in which he lost the United States Senate to the opposition party, the Republicans. This is significant in foreign policy terms because it is the Senate that approves international treaties. And if the Senate is in opposition hands, this is going to mean that the Obama administration and the president himself has more of an uphill challenge getting treaties and getting international agreements through a Senate controlled by the opposition party. So it's understood that he needs to go into this APEC summit and the follow-on G20 summit in Brisbane on November 15 and 16 in a way that at least projects that he is confident that he will begin to continue to engage world leaders eye to eye and will continue to try to work out agreements with them, despite the fact that the Senate, which has to approve these agreements, is now in opposition hands.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on The World today. Thank you also for breaking it down for us at the APEC Summit. A big thank you to Jeffrey Young, who's with the VOA. He joined us from the studios in Washington. When we come back after the break on The World today, families of those who lost families of victims in the MH17 crash remember their loved ones. And Berlin, the people in Berlin remember 25 years since the fall of the wall that divided East and West Germany. Please join us again.